Would you believe that scientists at the University of Michigan discovered seniors who adopt just 3 specific habits experience 60% greater life satisfaction than their peers? The line between flourishing in retirement versus merely enduring it isn't about wealth or health. It's about 9 powerful mindset shifts anyone can make. Meet Robert. At 68, after decades as a successful executive, he found himself staring at empty days with crushing purposelessness. But today, he calls this the richest chapter of his life. His transformation wasn't magic, it was method. And I'm about to show you. Welcome to Life Advice for Older People, where we cut through the noise to deliver what actually works. Robert wasn't prepared for what retirement would bring. After 40 years climbing the corporate ladder, his corner office suddenly became an empty living room. Then came the knee problems. No more golf, no more tennis. His colleagues stopped calling. His purpose vanished. I felt like I'd become invisible, he told me. Like society had decided I was finished. Does that strike a chord? That gnawing question of whether your most meaningful days are now just memories? Whether joy and purpose have an expiration date? You're not alone. And more importantly, you're not without hope. Harvard's landmark Aging Well study followed over 2,000 seniors for more than 2 decades. The researchers weren't just collecting data, they were mapping the precise differences between those who flourished and those who floundered in their later years. Today, I'm sharing the 9 evidence-based distinctions that separate fulfilled seniors from bitter ones. These aren't vague suggestions. They're specific, actionable practices that transformed Robert's life and could transform yours too. If you're finding value already, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. Our community is growing because people like you are discovering that your best years might still be ahead of you, not behind. Let's start with the first distinction that changed everything for Robert. A groundbreaking study from Stanford University tracked seniors over 5 years and made a stunning discovery. Those with structured daily routines experienced 43% less cognitive decline than those without. But here's what makes this finding so powerful. It wasn't just about being busy, it was about having meaningful anchor points throughout the day. Robert's story illustrates this perfectly. After retirement, I'd wake up whenever I felt like it, Robert explained. Sometimes 7, sometimes 10, then I'd wander around the house, turn on the TV, and suddenly it was dinner time. Days blurred together, I felt purposeless. This is the bitter approach, waking with no direction, drifting through hours with nothing to anticipate or accomplish. Time becomes an enemy rather than an asset. But when Robert visited his former colleague Thomas, a man 5 years older yet seemingly decades younger in spirit, he noticed something striking. Thomas had this small notebook. Every morning, he'd check 3 things he was looking forward to that day. Nothing grand, a walk at 9, coffee with a friend at 11, reading on his porch at 4, but his eyes lit up describing each one. This is the happy approach, creating meaningful anchor points that give shape and purpose to your day. Not rigid scheduling, but intentional moments of meaning. For Robert, change began with one simple morning ritual, brewing coffee while listening to classical music, then spending 15 minutes on his porch planning just 3 meaningful activities for the day. It sounds trivial, Robert admitted, but having those anchor points transformed everything. I started sleeping better because I had reasons to get up. I felt sharper because each day had purpose. Here's how you can apply this in your life. First, create a morning ritual that signals your day has purpose, something simple you enjoy that transitions you into wakefulness with intention. Second, plan just 3 meaningful activities each day, not a packed schedule, but anchor points to anticipate. Third, balance structure with spontaneity. Leave room for unexpected opportunities while maintaining your core routines. What's one small routine that brings meaning to your day? Share it in the comments below. Your simple practice might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. But if you think routines matter, wait until you hear about difference number 2. Which transformed even the most isolated seniors I've worked with. One of the most compelling studies in senior wellness comes from Rush University Medical Center. Their researchers followed older adults for an astonishing 21 years, and discovered something remarkable. Those who consistently pursued new skills or knowledge reduced their dementia risk by up to 32%. That's more effective than many medications. But Robert initially rejected this idea completely. Learning something new at my age? I spent 4 decades mastering business strategy. Why would I become a beginner again at something else? He told me. Besides, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, that's what everyone says. This bitter mindset, I'm too old to learn new things, creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. When we believe our brains have hardened, they begin to do exactly that. Robert's son invited him to a woodworking class as a birthday gift. Robert went reluctantly, expecting to be embarrassed by his lack of skill. I was terrible that first day, Robert laughed. Couldn't even cut a straight line. The instructor was probably half my age, but he said something that changed everything for me. The instructor told Robert, "Your advantage is that you have no deadline, no boss expecting results. You can learn purely for the joy of learning." This simple reframe shifted Robert's entire perspective. He wasn't behind. He was exactly where he needed to be as a beginner. Within 6 months, Robert was crafting beautiful cutting boards for family members. Within a year, he was teaching basic techniques to other beginners. I discovered this whole community of learners my age. None of us were experts, but we all shared the happy mindset. I'm never too old to discover something new. This mindset is backed by neuroscience. Your brain continues to form new connections throughout life. The key is approaching learning differently than you did in your working years. Here are 3 ways to incorporate learning without feeling overwhelmed. First, choose topics of genuine interest, not obligation. Learning driven by curiosity activates reward centers in your brain that enhance memory. Second, embrace the beginner's mindset. Release the need to be instantly competent. The learning itself is the victory. Third, find a community. Whether it's a local class or an online group, learning alongside others multiplies both motivation and joy. What's something you've always wanted to learn? Share it in the comments. It's not too late, and you might inspire someone else to take that first step. But continuous learning only works when combined with our third difference, which might surprise you. The National Institute on Aging recently published findings that shocked many health professionals. Their research revealed that just 15 minutes of deliberate movement daily increased happiness markers by 26% in adults over 70. Not an hour at the gym, just 15 minutes of intentional movement. For Robert, this seemed impossible at first. When my doctor told me I needed knee replacement surgery, I basically surrendered, Robert admitted. I'd been active all my life. Golf, tennis, hiking. Suddenly all that was gone. I told myself, well, this is just what happens when you get old. This bitter approach, using age or health limitations as permission to become completely sedentary, is remarkably common. We believe the story that aging equals inevitable decline, so we accelerate that decline through inaction. Robert spent 8 months in this mindset, growing increasingly stiff and depressed, until a chance encounter at his physical therapy appointment. There was this 82-year-old woman in the waiting room, doing these flowing movements while seated. She looked so peaceful, so graceful, despite being there for hip issues. I had to ask what she was doing. The woman was practicing chair yoga, which she'd started after her own mobility challenges. She invited Robert to a seniors class at her community centre. I went thinking it would be embarrassing, Robert said. Instead, it was liberating. I discovered I could still move my body meaningfully, even with knee issues. We weren't trying to be Olympic athletes, we were just keeping our bodies alive. This is the happy approach, finding adaptive, enjoyable movement that honours your current abilities while gently expanding them. Within weeks, Robert added adaptive strength training with resistance bands. His mood improved dramatically, his sleep deepened, and most surprisingly, his knee pain actually decreased. Here are 3 practical ways to incorporate movement regardless of your mobility level. First, start where you are, not where you were. Release comparisons to your younger self or others. Second, find movement that brings joy. Not just exercise that feels like medicine. Dance, garden, swim, stretch. Pleasure sustains practice. Third, connect movement to something meaningful. Walking while calling a friend. stretching while watching your favorite show, or exercising with a group for accountability. What's one small way you stay active that others might benefit from? Share your adaptive movement ideas in the comments. Your suggestion might be exactly what someone else needs. Physical movement is powerful, but it's nothing compared to difference number 4, which transformed Robert's social life completely. A groundbreaking study published in the Journals of Gerontology tracked seniors over 7 years and made a remarkable discovery. Those with diverse social connections had 50% lower mortality rates compared to their isolated peers. Not 5%, not 15%, a full 50% difference in survival rates. Yet this was perhaps Robert's greatest struggle. "When I was an executive, people sought me out," Robert explained. "My phone rang constantly, my opinion mattered. After retirement, that stopped almost overnight. I told myself I didn't need new people in my life. That was just my pride talking." This bitter approach, limiting your social circle to familiar faces or isolating completely, creates a steadily shrinking world. As we lose connections through moves, illness or death, we don't replace them. Robert maintained this stubborn isolation until his doctor became concerned about his increasing depression. "My doctor suggested a veterans support group. I laughed in his face," Robert recalled. "I said I wasn't some broken man who needed group therapy, but he challenged me. 'Is your pride more important than your health?' That question hit home." Robert reluctantly attended a meeting of veterans in his area. "I went planning to sit quietly in the back for an hour, then never return. Instead, I found men who understood exactly what I was going through. Not just as veterans, but as men trying to redefine ourselves after careers ended. This is the happy approach, continuously creating new connections, even when it feels uncomfortable initially." The group became Robert's anchor. Through them, he connected with a local community garden, where he met people of various ages and backgrounds. His world expanded rather than contracted. Here are 3 non-intimidating ways to expand your social connections after 65. First, leverage existing interests. Whether it's books, crafts, sports or history, shared passions create natural conversation starters. Second, embrace structured settings. Classes, volunteer positions or groups provide built-in purposes beyond just socializing, reducing pressure. Third, start with one-to-one connections before groups. Coffee with a neighbor feels less overwhelming than a room full of strangers. How have you met new friends in recent years? Share your ideas in the comments. Your approach might be exactly what someone else needs to break their isolation. But relationship quality matters even more than quantity, which brings us to difference number 5. Mayo Clinic researchers recently published findings that should make us all take notice. Their study revealed that seniors who practice daily gratitude experience 28% fewer depressive symptoms and report 31% better sleep quality compared to those who don't. That's without medication, therapy, or any expensive interventions. Yet for Robert, gratitude seemed impossible initially. "I kept a mental inventory of everything I'd lost," Robert confessed. "My corner office, my executive assistant, my expense account, my professional respect. When people asked how retirement was going, I'd say, 'Great.' But inside, I was listing all the things I missed about my old life." This bitter approach, dwelling on what's been lost or envying what others have, creates a scarcity mindset that no amount of external abundance can satisfy. Robert's perspective began to shift during a conversation with his veterans group facilitator, a retired colonel named James. "I was complaining about how irrelevant I felt, and James just listened," Robert recalled. "Then he asked me one question. 'What can you do now that you could never do when you were climbing the corporate ladder?' The question stopped Robert cold. He realized he had freedom to read for pleasure, to spend unhurried time with grandchildren, to mentor young entrepreneurs without corporate politics, to travel midweek when places were less crowded. I began listing these things out loud, and James smiled. He said, "That's your gratitude practice. Start there. This is the happy approach, developing a systematic gratitude practice that trains your brain to notice abundance rather than scarcity. Robert developed what he calls his 3-3-3 gratitude method, specifically designed for seniors. First, each morning, acknowledge 3 physical abilities you still possess, no matter how simple. I can see the sunrise. I can taste my coffee. I can hear my favorite music. Second, each afternoon, recognize 3 relationships that enrich your life, not just family obligations, but connections that truly nourish you. Third, each evening, identify 3 freedoms you have now that weren't possible in earlier life stages, whether due to work, parenting, or other responsibilities. This simple practice rewired Robert's perspective from loss to appreciation, from what was taken to what remained. What's one thing you're grateful for today that you might have taken for granted when younger? Share in the comments. Your perspective might spark gratitude in someone else. Gratitude changes our perspective, but difference number 6 fundamentally alters how we process challenges. Yale University's groundbreaking project on aging revealed something remarkable about resilience in later years. Seniors with high adaptability scores reported 44% higher life satisfaction, even when facing serious health challenges compared to those who resisted change. The ability to adapt wasn't just nice to have, it was essential for thriving. For Robert, this lesson came through his lifelong passion, golf. Golf was my identity for decades, Robert explained. Every Saturday, rain or shine. Business deals happened on the course. Then my knee problems made it impossible to play 18 holes. I couldn't even manage 9 without pain. This reality crushed him. For months, Robert avoided driving past golf courses because seeing others play was too painful. This bitter approach, rigidity and resistance to changing circumstances, creates a brittleness that snaps under pressure. The more we insist life must be exactly as it was, the more suffering we create. Robert's transformation began when his grandson, an aspiring high school golfer, asked for help improving his game. I told him I couldn't play anymore, Robert said. He looked confused and replied, I don't need you to play. I need your brain. You understand course strategy better than anyone. That comment sparked something in Robert. He began meeting his grandson at the course, riding in the cart, analysing the terrain, discussing club selection and teaching the mental aspects of the game. I wasn't swinging clubs anymore, but I was still in the game, Robert said. Then other parents asked if I'd mentor their kids too. Suddenly I wasn't an injured has-been, I was a valuable strategist. This is the happy approach, finding creative workarounds to limitations rather than surrendering to them entirely. Robert developed what he calls the adapt and thrive method. First, separate identity from method. Ask yourself, what core need did this activity fulfill? For Robert, golf provided skill mastery, social connection, and time outdoors, all needs he could meet in modified ways. Second, embrace technological assistance without shame. Whether it's hearing aids, mobility devices, or kitchen gadgets, tools that extend capability are strengths, not weaknesses. Third, focus on the possible, not the lost. Direct your energy toward what remains available rather than mourning what's gone. What's something you've successfully adapted in your life recently? Share in the comments. Your creative solution might be exactly what someone else needs. Adaptability is crucial, but it's difference number 7 that truly surprised researchers. A landmark study from Johns Hopkins University revealed something remarkable about the aging brain. Seniors who volunteer just 4 hours weekly demonstrate improved cognitive function equivalent to someone 5 years younger, not through expensive supplements or treatments, simply through the act of giving back. For Robert, this discovery came when he was at his lowest point. I was tired of feeling useless, Robert admitted. My company had replaced me with someone 20 years younger. My skills seemed obsolete. I was just taking up space. This bitter approach, focusing primarily on what you're receiving or what you've lost, creates a sense of diminishing value. When we see ourselves only as recipients rather than contributors, our self-worth inevitably suffers. Robert's perspective shifted during a casual conversation with his daughter, who worked at a local university. She mentioned how her business students had textbook knowledge but zero real-world experience, Robert explained. They could quote theories but couldn't navigate office politics or complex negotiations, all the things I'd mastered over decades. On a whim, Robert offered to guest lecture. That single 90-minute session transformed his outlook completely. These students were hanging on my every word, Robert recalled, his voice brightening. All the knowledge I took for granted, managing difficult personalities, ethical dilemmas, strategic thinking, was gold to them. I walked out feeling more energized than I had in years. This is the happy approach, finding ways to contribute your unique wisdom and experience, regardless of physical or other limitations. The university soon invited Robert to become a regular mentor in their entrepreneurship program. He met with students monthly, reviewing business plans and sharing insights from his 4 decades of experience. For the first time since retirement, I felt irreplaceable again, Robert said. These young people have questions only someone with my life experience can answer. Here's how you can find meaningful ways to give back, perfectly suited to your abilities. First, inventory your invisible assets. What knowledge, skills, or perspectives have you gained that younger generations might value? Second, start small and specific. Offering targeted help in one area creates more impact than general volunteering. Third, consider non-traditional contributions. Mentoring can happen remotely, writing can share wisdom broadly, and even listening deeply is a profound gift to others. How do you share your wisdom or talents with others? Your experience could inspire someone in our community. Let us know in the comments. While giving back provides purpose, difference number 8 protects your peace of mind daily. Groundbreaking research from the University of California revealed something many of us intuitively suspect. Seniors who establish clear boundaries report 37% less stress and anxiety than those who don't. This single practice impacts nearly every aspect of well-being, from blood pressure to sleep quality. Yet for Robert, boundaries proved surprisingly challenging. After I started mentoring at the university, word spread that I was available, Robert explained. Former colleagues called for free consulting. Family members assumed I could babysit any time. Everyone wanted a piece of my retirement. At first, Robert said yes to everything. He was flattered by the attention and afraid of being forgotten if he declined. I became exhausted and resentful, he admitted. I'd say yes outwardly, but inwardly feel angry. My calendar was full, but not with things I'd chosen. This bitter approach creates a painful dilemma, either complete isolation or over-availability with no middle ground. Neither extreme serves well-being. Robert's awakening came during a conversation with his doctor about his rising blood pressure. My doctor asked how I was spending my time, Robert recalled. When I described my schedule, he shook his head and said, "You've retired from your job but taken on unpaid work for everyone else. That's not retirement, that's exploitation." Those words struck deep. Robert realized he needed a framework for deciding what deserved his time and what didn't. This is the happy approach. Strategic engagement with clear limits, not based on guilt or obligation, but on conscious choice. Robert developed what he calls the boundary blueprint method. First, classify all requests using 3 categories: energy giving, activities that rejuvenate you; energy neutral, neither draining nor energizing; and energy draining, activities that deplete you. Second, establish your non-negotiables, specific times reserved exclusively for your well-being, whether it's morning meditation, afternoon walks, or evening reading. Third, create standard responses for declining gracefully. Robert keeps these saved in his phone, making it easier to say no without guilt or lengthy explanations. Setting boundaries wasn't about pushing people away, Robert emphasized. It was about protecting my capacity to be fully present for what matters most. What boundary have you established that's improved your well-being? Share your experience in the comments. Your clarity might help someone else find their voice. Boundaries protect your energy, but our final difference is what truly transformed Robert's outlook. Our final difference, number 9, cultivating spiritual wellness. Duke University conducted a remarkable 20-year study that followed seniors through various life challenges and transitions. Their findings were profound. Those with regular spiritual practices showed extraordinary resilience, recovering from setbacks 40% faster than those without such practices. For Robert, this dimension was initially the most uncomfortable to explore. "I was never particularly religious," Robert explained. "In business, I focused on tangibles, quarterly results, market share, concrete outcomes. The idea of spirituality seemed vague and frankly unnecessary." When retirement stripped away his professional identity, Robert felt unmoored. He filled his calendar with activities but still experienced a persistent emptiness. This bitter approach, disconnection from any larger meaning or purpose, creates what psychologists call an existential vacuum. Without some framework for making sense of our experiences, especially suffering, we remain vulnerable to despair. Robert's journey towards spiritual wellness began unexpectedly at his local library. "I noticed a flyer for a philosophy discussion group," he recalled. "The topic was finding meaning in later life. I almost walked past it, but something made me stop." The group met weekly to discuss philosophical texts from various traditions. No dogma, just open exploration of life's fundamental questions. We talked about legacy, impermanence, gratitude, forgiveness, things I'd never made time for during my career, Robert said. "I discovered that spiritual doesn't necessarily mean religious. It's about cultivating awareness of something larger than your individual concerns. This is the happy approach, finding ways to connect with something greater than oneself, whether through nature, art, service, meditation, or traditional religious practice." Robert also began taking sunrise walks, a practice he describes as accidentally spiritual. "There's something about watching the world wake up that puts my problems in perspective," he explained. "I feel simultaneously tiny and connected to everything. My worries don't disappear, but they take their proper place in a larger context." Here are some inclusive approaches to spiritual wellness that don't require specific religious beliefs. Contemplative practices like meditation or mindful walking that cultivate present moment awareness. Exploring philosophical texts or discussion groups that examine life's fundamental questions. Immersion in nature, art, or music that evokes wonder and transcendence. Service to others that connects you to humanity's shared journey. Gratitude practices that acknowledge the gift of existence itself. How do you nurture your spiritual side? What practices bring you peace? Share your experience in the comments. Your path might illuminate someone else's. These 9 differences aren't about denying the real challenges of aging. They're about responding to those challenges in ways that nurture joy rather than bitterness. As Robert discovered, it's not what happens to us, but how we meet it that determines whether our later years become our better years. When I first met Robert 18 months ago, he described himself as existing, not living. Today, at 70, he calls these the richest years of his life. "If you had told me then what my life would look like now, I wouldn't have believed you," Robert shared recently. "I wake up with purpose. I have meaningful connections with people of all ages. I contribute value that's uniquely mine to give." The transformation didn't happen overnight. It began with small, intentional changes. A morning routine here, a boundary there, a new connection somewhere else. Gradually, these practices compounded, creating a life fundamentally different from the bitter trajectory he was on. "My son told me something remarkable last month," Robert said, his voice catching slightly. "And he said his children talk about wanting to be like Grandpa when they grow up. Not the stressed executive I once was, but the man I've become in these later years. That's the power of these 9 differences we've explored today. Purposeful daily routines that provide structure and meaning. Continuous learning that keeps your mind sharp and curious. Maintaining physical movement adapted to your current abilities. Cultivating new relationships across diverse groups and ages. Practicing gratitude intentionally through systematic awareness. Embracing adaptability when facing limitations or challenges, giving back to others through your unique wisdom and experience. Setting healthy boundaries that protect your energy and peace. Cultivating spiritual wellness that connects you to something larger. Each of these practices is supported by research, but more importantly, each has been lived by real people like Robert who have transformed bitterness into joy, emptiness into meaning. I want to leave you with this thought. Your most joyful chapter may still be ahead of you. Not because your circumstances are perfect, but because you have the wisdom now to meet life's challenges differently than you could in your younger years. Which of these 9 differences resonated most deeply with you? Let us know in the comments below. Your reflection might be exactly the insight someone else needs to begin their own transformation journey. Before you go, if these insights helped you today or sparked something within you, please hit that like button and subscribe to Life Advice for Older People. Each week, we bring you research-based strategies specifically designed for making your senior years truly golden. This channel exists because of this community, people like you who refuse to accept that joy diminishes with age. By subscribing, you'll not only get our latest videos, but you'll help us reach more people who might need these exact insights. And please, share your own wisdom in the comments below. What's one practice that's brought you genuine happiness in your senior years? Your experience could be exactly what another viewer needs to hear today. Remember, we're not just getting older, we're getting better at living. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I'll see you in our next video.